This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
We won the lottery! Stroz! We might get to care about the Pistons!
Have you ever been so happy to win something but not actually win a game?
I mean, look, there have been some promising things for the Tigers this year. Casey Mize looks great. I know he struggled a little bit the last few starts, but he looks the part of a generational talent in his rookie year. Honestly, I would say that. The Pistons had some excitement, obviously, with Sadiq Bey, Isaiah Stewart, and Killian Hayes in the limited time at the end of the year looks fine too. But what winning the lottery does for the Pistons is fast forward the clock dramatically. And I'm not even talking about fast forwarding the clock to a winner. I'm talking about, I think this year it will be fun to watch the Pistons. And fun meaning, I think I'm going to want to turn on the Pistons on a regular basis. And this is going to be a very Pistons-heavy show. Kind of funny, was already the plan. Later on, we're going to talk about Ben Simmons. Is he somebody the Pistons should look into? Because we know he ain't going to be in Philly next year. And also, Stroz, you never provide the middle topic. But I think the way you put this to me was so funny. What should you do? You caught your girlfriend snooping. We're going to get into that as well. But maybe I'm wrong. I think the Pistons are going to be, if you're a basketball fan, a team that you want to turn the TV on whenever they play. I really believe that. Now, they might not take Cade Cunningham. That could change things a little bit. But even if they don't, it's a strong draft at the top, and I think they will. And if they do, you have a guy who, I don't know if he will be this. This is the way I put it to my dad. I think his ceiling is top 10 NBA player. Maybe I'm being a little bit too excited, but I don't think it's out of the question. This is a guy who's being compared stylistically to a Grant Hill, or I know he can't hit shots, contested shots the way that this guy does, but stylistically, again, to a Luka Doncic. Like, we're talking about a guy who fits the prototype of the future. He's a 6'8" ball handler who can shoot and play good defense. He's not perfect. He's got some problems. I think he'll benefit from playing with, a good team. Not that the Pistons are that. But there's I don't think that there's anything to wait for. I think the Pistons will have, depending on what they do with Killian Hayes, 4 starters who could be a part of the next team to win a playoff series. That's how far I'm willing to go. I don't know how many of them are there for anything serious, but I think they could have 4 starters next year that are on the roster when they win a playoff series.
I agree with you 100%. And here's the thing. I think you're right. It does, by winning the lottery, it does fast forward the timeline. You now have, going into next season, you should expect them to contend and to be in the playoffs, whether it's in a
I'm
weird
okay with them not making the playoffs.
Okay, why?
But I because they had the worst record in the league.
Okay.
I just don't think, I don't think teams always turn it around that fast. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I agree.
Did Memphis make the draft after Ja's rookie year? Because that's a team I look at, a team with a lot of interesting young pieces. I don't think they did.
I'm not 100% sure.
I don't believe Ja has been to the playoffs. But it's a team that, or maybe the play-in, but it's a team that I look at and think is a very similar comparison with some nice young pieces.
This is what I would tell you. This is why I would say that I would expect them to be a little bit further along than maybe you expect them. At the end of last year, this team looked like they were starting to put it together. It looked like it was a team that was...
They lost to the Jazz this year. I'm sorry. Yeah, so they didn't make it last year. This is their first year in the playoffs.
It looked like a team towards the end of last season that you had pieces that took substantial steps forward, and there was a lot of growth. And going into the year, I think we both agreed they were made to lose. They were built to lose. And I think what ended up happening is they ended up winning down the stretch, and that was why you had to bench a lot of guys. Like, we talked about this before, too. This tank was executed perfectly. Like, you couldn't have asked for anything better, right? I mean, the whole goal was to somehow manage to get the first overall draft pick. You got that. You finished second worst team in the league. And to do that, down the stretch, guys like Jeremy Grant had to sit. I believe Sadiq Bey had to sit a couple games. It all worked out, and it was great. But guys like Sadiq Bey, guys like Killian Hayes, those guys really took a lot of steps forward last year. And I think and look, I don't know how you feel about Dwayne Casey, but I think he's a pretty damn good coach, especially for young guys.
He's clearly a good talent developer. We'll see, when you're expecting to win things, if he's the guy or not. But clearly, he is good at developing talent. And
I think if it is Cade Cunningham, if it is, like, we don't know what's going to happen. If it is Cade Cunningham, this is a guy who, depending on which analyst you listen to, like you said, you've heard him compared to Grant Hill. But Jesus Christ, if he's Grant Hill, that's great. I've heard he's the best. He's the best.
Grant Hill was a damn good player even with major injuries.
Right.
Take those away from him, and what does he end up?
He was like, when Grant Hill was coming out, he was supposed to be the next Michael Jordan. That was comparisons on Grant Hill. But Cade Cunningham has been compared, or from analysts that I've heard, he's the best college prospect to come out in 10, 15 years. Like, take that guy, add him to this roster.
Is he really being viewed that way? I don't know that I've read those.
That's what I've heard.
I know this.
I thought that was a little bit of I thought that was a little hyperbolic. He doesn't
feel like a sure thing. Like, some guys feel like a sure thing, and he doesn't feel like that. But the ceiling is there.
Yeah. Like,
I guess if you're saying the highest ceiling in the last 10 years, that's believable. Like, it is. I mean, Doncic was also viewed as like a guy who could be the face of the league, and looks like he maybe one day. But like, I look at I was asked this question: if salary had nothing to do with it, and we'll get into this later, would you trade Ben Simmons or trade the number 1 pick for Ben Simmons? And I do believe if salary meant nothing, Ben Simmons is a damn good NBA player. But I don't think Ben Simmons' ceiling is the number 1 player on a championship team. I think Ben Simmons' ceiling is probably the number 3 player on a championship team. Agreed. The ceiling for Cade Cunningham, and we're talking about a 19-year-old kid, the ceiling is he could be the best player on a championship team. The Pistons have a chance to draft a guy who could be the number 1, while already having some nice pieces. I don't know if they have a number 2 on the roster, but I'll tell you what, I think they have the pieces to acquire a number 2 in a trade should one become available.
I agree with you 100% there. I think the way that you've had this roster put together, and I think the way that this going into this draft with all the draft picks that you do have, I think you've got more than enough ammunition. If you wanted to trade back up and you wanted to get a solid piece, I think you totally could.
Well, I don't want to get too deep into this because we're going to talk about it later. Mm-hmm. But put it this way: last offseason, Ben Simmons, the Rockets offered James Harden for Ben Simmons straight up, just to give some context to Ben Simmons, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a single doubt in my mind, even if you take the number 1 overall pick off the table. I don't have a single doubt in my mind the Pistons could land Ben Simmons and still have other intriguing pieces on the roster.
I think that's possible too.
Oh, I don't think it's possible. If you said, "Hey, we're going to get Killian Hayes, Isaiah Stewart, and a future first," I think they would cream themselves.
I don't want to get too deep down the Ben Simmons rabbit hole because there's stuff there for us to chew on.
All I'm saying is that there are so many pieces that take Ben Simmons off the table. Mm-hmm. The point I'm making is there are so many pieces. Stars become available all the time. Ben Simmons is one. Stars become available all the time, and you have the pieces to go and get one without sending everything. That's why, like, I look at this roster and say, if Cade Cunningham hits, you basically have 2 superstars. And it's silly because you haven't traded for the second one. But all I'm saying is I don't have a doubt in my mind that they have the pieces to trade for a second one. I think there's a case to be made. There might not be a team in the league who is in a better spot to trade for a superstar because of the accumulation of picks. Or, picks and not pick. I guess Oklahoma City if you're talking picks. But, like, young pieces.
Young pieces, yeah. And I think that is... Here's the thing, too. This is something I wanted to throw at you. I wanted to ask you this. If for some reason Detroit, I don't know, gets crazy, they get a little bit spicy, and they trade back. I don't know why they would, but let's just say they do. How much confidence do you have that pick's going to work out? I feel like whatever this team does, like, I'm being for real. Like, whatever this team does,
I feel it.
It's going to work. Whether it's Cade Cunningham, whether it's Jalen Slugs, whether it's, I don't know, insert player X here. And it's just because of the job that has been done with the previous season. Like, I've got nothing but confidence in this front office in executing and doing things the right way.
So I've been burned enough times in that thought process. I felt that way about Bob Quinn. I felt that way about Stan Van Gundy. And I think it was fair to feel that way about him. Early on, things went really well for him. Even that 0-4 sweep against 0-4, meaning obviously sweep, not in 2004, but that sweep against the Cavs in that playoff run, like, it felt like that team played with an energy that would carry over for the next year, you know? So I've been burned too many times by that to not factor that in. But I do agree, like, I really want Cade Cunningham, and there's going to be a sense of, like, oh, God, was that the – like, I don't like that if they trade out of the pick. But I'm not going to feel the way that you or I did when the Lions took TJ Hawkinson. It's not going to be like, oh, no, more you than me.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is natural. I didn't like it either. I didn't like it either. But for you, the world was ending.
Yep.
And I won't feel that way, even though my gut says you have to draft Cade, simply because I trust Troy Weaver. Like, in fact, I've already thought about it. Though the circumstance that comes to my mind is when the Celtics traded back from the number 1 pick, which was, everybody knew it was Markelle Fultz. Mm-hmm. And the Celtics didn't have the future point guard. And they got murdered for that trade. If I remember correctly, they got an additional first. And they took the better player in Jason Tatum. The far better player, not even close. I'll have nerves if they decide to trade back, but that is what I'll hold on to. A GM who had shown, Danny Ainge had so much success in Boston with the moves he made. He got some criticism towards the end of his career, but I believe he's great. Troy Weaver doesn't have that track record, but he has a track record of knowing where the talent is. And if he doesn't believe Cade Cunningham's the guy, I'm not going to be panicking.
I'm right there with you. I'm in the same boat as you, where I've got enough faith in him, and I believe in what he's done because of what he did last year. And being able to get a guy who's a starter and a productive starter at 19 and going out to being able to grab guys and insert them into this lineup, and they're talented and they produce. And that's something that we're not used to seeing, especially for the Pistons. So it gives me confidence in this front office, in Troy Weaver, to be able to go out and make those moves. And you're right. If he was to trade back and he was to move down and he was able to go grab somebody, I'm in the same boat as you. I'm basically holding on to what Danny Ainge did. And
have you already thought about that as well?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So especially when I woke up this morning and I look at my phone and it's like Troy Weaver's open to trading the first pick. And I was like, wait, what? Like, just let this set in for a second. What are we talking about?
I'll be a lot more naturally okay with it as long as it's one of the top 5 or maybe 6 guys. Mm-hmm. Because everyone says there's 5 or maybe 6. Like Oklahoma City sitting at 6 with 17 picks, I believe, is in the next 7 years. If they want to give you 4 picks, including number 6, it's going to be harder to criticize that. I'll have some nerves, but I also, it will be in Weaver we trust moment.
No, for sure it is. And look, I have nothing but confidence in whatever he's going to do. And again, it's purely based on what he did last year. So whether it's Cade, whether it's somebody else, whether it's trading back, I think this organization has done a really good job of building to this point. And now you can add that superstar. You can add. So I was in Milwaukee, right? I was in Milwaukee for the weekend. And it's crazy to see how Milwaukee fans just act and are right now. Like, they basically roll out of bed with their Giannis PJs on. They need the Detroit Pistons need their Giannis. They need their superstar, right? If it's Cade Cunningham, great. If it's somebody else, great. They need that player. They need that guy, because the entire city of Milwaukee was in an uproar. You had Game 7 going on. It was absolutely bonkers. Everybody, everywhere you turned, everybody had a Milwaukee jersey on, had a Milwaukee hat on. It was absolute craziness, and it was awesome to see. But Giannis is a guy who basically transformed the face of an organization and made them relevant. Detroit needs that. And if it's Cade Cunningham, great. And you've got pieces that you can insulate him with, which I think is even better. It's a lot of pressure for a 19-year-old going on 20. But I think you could, if he's the guy, That's what you need. You need to be able to get a young, talented superstar here where other talented guys want to come and play.
I do want to get to Alyssa snooping in just a moment. And by the way, I was going to tell you your camera needed to turn on because I'm very curious. Like the way you posed this question to me with very little information, I thought it was very funny. So we're going to get to that in a second. I do need to ask, and the answer is always no. Did you see my tweet this week about how long it's been since there was a good Detroit sports team?
I did not see it.
So I had the realization. No, you're good. I had the realization while arguing with a friend from college who was trying to say Philadelphia sports have had it worse than Detroit over the last decade. He forgot a Super Bowl. But anyways, I had the realization that so my mom passed away in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And I very vividly remember when she passed away, like early on, just having this hyper awareness of the smallest things that were still the same from when she was alive. And when I say that, I mean, like, I remember when we had like the shampoo bottle that we had in the shower ran out after she passed away and we threw it out. I remember when the toothpaste ran out, when the napkin, I'm not even kidding. Like, I don't remember the exact day or anything like that. But like, I remember observing those things, like, because those were the things that, like, they were still there when she was alive. Somehow something slipped through the cracks. Detroit sports have not won a playoff series since my mom passed away. In fact, my mom passed away only a couple months after the last series win, which was a Tigers divisional series win in 2013. It's not anything crazy. It's just for me personally, and it doesn't do anything for you, obviously. But for me personally, it really put that into such context, how long it's been since we've had anything here. Because I joke that I lived 3 different lifetimes in Grand Rapids. And I tell you, I've lived 2 different lifetimes in Houston. And I still went to 3 years of college after my mom passed away. I don't think I'm remotely the same person I was the last time the city of Detroit had a playoff win.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, it really put into context how long that's been. Like, I grew up with such good Detroit sports teams, and I'm sure it helped me be such the sports fan that I am today. Who knows if I would have wanted to go into sports radio if the teams weren't so good when I was so young. But we just haven't lived in that world for such a long time. And it was a really interesting observation to me.
It is weird because it has been so damn long since you've had anything of relevance or a team that you can just kind of latch onto. Even like when the Red Wings were making it to the playoffs, but getting smoked by Tampa Bay every single season. Like, they weren't good. Like,
if it wasn't for them, they're the only ones who've made the playoffs since my mom passed away. Yeah. They had three years in a row they lost the first round.
And it was, and they weren't even a good team. Like, you knew going into it, you're like, these guys are going to lose. I don't know why we're watching. So it's been forever. Like, if I was to look at my life and compare it to what it was when Detroit was relevant in anything, I mean, there's a whole lot.
Last time they won a playoff series, I assume October of 2013.
2013. So since then, I have moved out of state, moved back into state, been divorced, which means that I then got married. I did get married twice.
Wait. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, I had to get married. Like, so we had to get married because it was a green card thing. So like, I wasn't married to somebody else, but like, we got married.
I thought you had another ex-wife I wasn't aware of.
No. God, no.
That would have been the middle segment.
So, sold a house, bought a condo. Man, what else? So,
lived in a radio station.
Yeah, like, got to live out my dream working in a radio station. Got
there for a little bit, which was probably not part of the dream.
No, that was not part of the dream. Got to do shows with you, which was pretty cool. Dude, there's a ton. Like, it's crazy when you think about it. Like, it's been so damn long, I now have a dog that's cool as shit, so that's awesome. I got a girlfriend who's awesome and, like, doesn't make my life a living hell.
I feel like cool as shit's a higher ranking than awesome. I'm just gonna put that out there.
Well, my girlfriend's pretty cool as shit, so I mean, except when she's snooping. So we're gonna talk about that in a minute. But like, no, man, it's weird because I'll tell you this much: 2013 to now, there's been so much growth just with me as a person. Right. Like, I'm still an asshole.
That's a big part of it for me too.
Yeah. Like, I'm still an asshole. Let's not get it twisted. but like I'm such a better asshole. Like, and I'll be honest with you. There's been so many different things that I've kind of figured out about myself that make me such a better person. It's crazy. Like I'll be honest with you, I was a horrible little fuck back in the day. It was not.
Absolutely not surprised.
I'm trying to figure out when I got shot in the leg. Like, how long ago was that? Like, I would think the teams were still pretty decent back then. So it hasn't been that long.
All right. Well, I'm sure we'll reminisce again many times about when Detroit sports were useful at all. But Stroz, I'm gonna let you lead it. So what's going on? What? Because the question you asked me is, what should you do? I want to know what you're even thinking.
Okay. So I've got to kind of tiptoe with a little bit of this because she listens. So I can't go into a.
Does she know we're talking about this?
No, she has no idea. This is a surprise for her when she goes to listen. Come on, dude, you know how I do this. And like,
I don't endorse it. I think she should be given warning. I'm fine with like I'll talk about whatever I want to talk about, but like I believe she should be given a heads up and say that she should be able to give input about how she feels about it.
Look, man, I invite her on the show all the time. Like, you want to come on the show? And she's always like, no, I don't like hearing my own voice on the show. And I was like, well, you get used to it after a while. It's cool. She's like, no, I hate my voice. And I'm like,
I love hearing my
voice.
Right.
What's
always
that?
Have. I've always loved. Yeah, I love hearing my own
weird.
voice. Do you not like hearing your own voice? Or did you ever not like it?
Yes. I used to cringe.
I would get off of filling in on Big Druid Gym and listen to the replay hour on my drive home. I'd pull through Taco Bell and blast the replay hour. Be like, this guy sounds familiar.
That doesn't surprise me. No, I used to hate my voice. When I was a kid, I had no idea up until I was
like hearing myself talk.
Up until the age of, I think, like 12, I had no idea what my own voice sounded like because I would try to do impersonations of everything I heard because I hated the way my voice sounded. So that was weird. Anyways, back on track here. So she's going to be surprised when she hears this. Like when she hears the opening, she's going to be like, wait, what? And she'll probably fast forward right away. But so I've been trying to plan a little something for her, specifically for her birthday. All right. And I've had to move a couple things around just because of different situations that have gone on. And again, I can only give so many details because she's listening. But this is the situation. Her computer, for some reason, has trouble opening and reading PDF files. So she's got some of her business documents saved on my computer. I've got a ton of Adobe products on my computer. So obviously, my computer is able to read PDFs. It's able to open things. It's able to do whatever you really want to do with them. So she has business documents saved on my desktop, and she has a folder. I mean, it's basically titled Alyssa Shit. She named it, not me. And on my desktop, it's kind of this cluttered mess of like our videos from when we record, and then the audio files from those videos, and then the edited version of those after they've been cleaned up a little bit, and then it's what goes out to the podcast world. It's a lot of those. There's just like a line, like 3 lines of those. And I just kind of clear those out every 3 or 4 weeks and throw them in the trash. And then that's all basically on the left side of my desktop screen. On my right side, I've got some documents for my HOAs, and I've got some other random stuff. I got a couple demos on there. And down at the very bottom, I had it was kind of like mixed in with the clutter. It was titled Things to Do. It's just a Word document. And it's just there. And basically these are things to do when I take her to where I'm taking her or where I was planning to take her. Because I don't know if I'm going to take her there no more because somebody's a snoop. So she one day was like, hey, I need to get on your computer and I need to do some stuff for my business. Is that cool? And I was like, yeah, cool. No problem. No big deal. Whatever you want. I leave my computer at her place and she knows the password to get in. Probably my own fault for giving her that information, but whatever.
I also want to know how you expect her not to click on things to do.
Because there's no reason for her to be looking around. So like, I don't know. Like, I just wouldn't, I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I kind of forgot that I had left it there and like out in the open because it was one of those things where I was working on it. I think it was like post show. Like we did a show and I got done doing things and I was working on it, just trying to get a couple thoughts out of my head. Anyways, so she does her business stuff and then she clicks on that. And I know she clicks on that because what she doesn't understand. So she has an Apple and I've got just a regular old laptop. And with Windows 10, basically it shows you the most recent documents that it's viewed, and it gives you a timestamp. She didn't know that.
I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah.
I have, in a circumstance, opened documents I should not have opened, but made sure to look at what the recent documents were ahead of time. And I think it's 10 you have to open before it's off that like top page. And I proceeded. Now it's timestamp, but who's looking at the timestamp? I just opened the 10 documents so it would look the way it's supposed to.
So she did not, and she didn't realize that was a thing. So I think it was last week when I was putting our shows together. I was like, "What are you doing? Like, why did you click on this document?" And she was like, "What document?" She tried playing it off, like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, "Hey, dummy, look right here." I was like, "It's timestamped. I see that you've seen it." I was like, "What were you doing? Why are you snooping through my computer? Like, what's going on here?" And she's like, I didn't look at anything." And I was like, "Now you're just trying to lie, and you're really bad at lying. So, like, what are we doing?" And she was like, I didn't look." And I was like,
"It's your fault.
Like, you clicked it, you opened it.
That's your fault." Like, Stroz, I don't know her well enough to judge this, but like, if you put a plate of cookies in front of me, I'm gonna eat them. If you put a freaking folder that says things to do, that's a please click here button. That's your fault.
So, I mean, maybe it is my fault. I don't think so. I just think she shouldn't have been snooping. She shouldn't have been going around on my laptop when she's got a folder. Just go to your folder, leave everything else alone. Beside the point. What do I do now? Do I scrap all of my plans that I had? Or do I just kind of stick with the original plan?
I mean, how important is the surprise part of it?
I mean, I thought the surprise part of it was going to be kind of important. I'll be honest with you. This is how I felt. Like, when you were a kid, did you snoop for your Christmas gifts?
I don't think so. I think I've always been someone who would rather be surprised.
Okay. So, like, I'm very
My brother
difficult to
did.
surprise. Okay. I'm generally very difficult to surprise. And usually I can pick up a package and I know what's in it. And as a kid, I was a huge snoop. I would snoop for me and my sister. And I understand now where my mom was, where she would get pissed off and her feelings would be hurt because we snoop for the gifts, because it ruins the surprise.
Okay, so
the surprise
let me share
is the most important part.
Let me share this because I think it's important to helping me answer. Okay. So back in probably like 2012, 2013, that ballpark, surprised the girl I was dating with at that time with tickets to a Taylor Swift concert in Pittsburgh. She's a huge Taylor Swift fan. She'd have gone anywhere in the country to see a concert. It was really the only one that like was feasible as far as.
Too.
I became a Taylor Swift fan through her. We listened to her music a lot. Went to several concerts, and like I like her pop music. I don't love a lot of what she's done recently. But anyways, I had to tell her to like request the time off of work, and like there were some minor details that like needed to be figured out ahead of time. We were, 19, 20 years old. Like I had to be like, A, request the time off of work, like B, make sure your family doesn't have plans for you. Like, and she came to figure out what it was ahead of time. But the surprise would have been cool. Obviously, like it would have been awesome to be able to surprise her. But like what it was so much more important because she was a big Taylor Swift fan. So like bailing when she figured out, it wouldn't have made a lot of sense because the gift of the concert was far more important than the surprise. I was disappointed that I didn't get that surprise factor, but that just wasn't the important part of it. So like, is where you were going to take her more important than the surprise? Because if the answer is no, if where you were going to take her is not more important, then yes, you scrap it. If where you were going to take her was more important than the surprise, then no, you still go there.
That's interesting. That's a good perspective to kind of put it in.
I'm pretty smart if we're being honest.
That's some good perspective. I love how you toot your own horn.
I mean, I'm just being honest here. Like the way I thought through that was perfect.
Yeah.
Honestly, I feel like I solved this segment. Like some segments are arguments. Some segments, like you're on point A, point B, and like, we might not always find an equal ground. Like there is no equal ground to be found here. I solved the problem. What's the other way around this? If the destination is more important than the surprise, but you scrap it, you're an idiot.
The destination is more important than the surprise.
If the destination is more important than the surprise, but you scrap it because it's not a surprise, you're an idiot.
I got you.
So you tell me, what do you do?
So here's the thing.
You don't want to say because you want to leave the possibility of surprise.
Well, the thing is, I don't necessarily feel like it's one of those things where it doesn't hold a ton of sentimental value. It's not one of those things where like I think it's make or break, right? I think it's one of those things where I could pivot and I could do a hard pivot and I could do something else. Do you know what I'm saying? You're saying neither is super important. Yeah, I don't feel like it is, at least not right now, you know? So I don't know. I'm in a weird spot because I could kind of go any which way. And again,
you were trying to like kill her like 4 episodes ago. So
yeah, I mean, you know, I was going to leave her ass on a mountain, and honestly, probably should have did that so she would have
as long as it's not there, that mountain, I think we're good. Yeah, I mean, I honestly, Stroz, I don't even have anything else to say. Like, I know I was joking, but like, I think that's the answer. Like, you decide what was more important.
Whose fault was it? Was it my fault or was it her fault for snooping?
Definitively your fault.
And what should I do? Should I scrap the entire plan and go in another direction, or just stick with the plan? Tweet me and be at Adam R STROZ at Brendan Riley _, right? Yes, I got it right.
I know, and you don't do that very often. Although,
I don't. Only 72 episodes in.
I don't do it very often anymore either. But like, don't waste your characters telling us what he should do. I've told him what he should do. It's up to him now. You want to talk about Ben Simmons?
Yeah, let's talk about Ben Simmons. I'm glad you brought this up, by the way, because I was thinking about this, but I wasn't sure if you were going to want to talk about this. So then when you proposed this, I was excited.
I think it's interesting because I think trading for Ben Simmons and what I think it would take to get him, like, I think you can, I said this already, I don't think there's any trouble getting Ben Simmons without Cade Cunningham. And so, like, knowing that, I think there's a case to be made. You can compete for playoff series, not just to make it, but like even to win a first round series as early as next year with Ben Simmons. If like you just want to have a competitive team, I think trading for Ben Simmons is a genius idea. But I think that Ben Simmons is the kind of guy, at best, he can be the third best player on a championship team. And I don't like going and getting that guy first when he's got a 4-year deal with, you know, essentially $40 million a year. I'm not all the way out on it, but I would want him for chump change. Like, if they're literally begging somebody to take him off their hands, and I don't think that's going to happen, but I wouldn't rule it out. If they're like, hey, look, give us Jeremy Grant and a future protected second, okay, let's do it. Let's roll. But, like, I don't want to give up Sadiq Bey, Isaiah Stewart, Killian Hayes. I would say I don't want to give up any of those three, and I don't want to give up the first. And I don't want to give up the future first either. If you can make it happen short of that, fuck it. Let's go.
So when you put it like that in that context, right, where you're giving up hardly anything, I agree with you, right? Because I think Ben Simmons has some potential, but I'm not willing.
He's not even just potential. Like, he's already a really good player.
I think he's a little bit broken. I think he's a little bit broken. There is something. It obviously it's mental, and he does need to work on his shot a little bit, but he needs to kind of
shot a lot of it. But there are things he does better than anybody.
He's trying to be polite, D.
I don't be polite. Like, he can't shoot anything outside of 12 feet. Like, I'm not being mean. I'm just being honest.
Right.
But there are things he does as well as anybody in the league. You know, if he's running a fast break, I don't know that there's many people I'd rather have. If he's got the ball against a smaller dude inside, I love it. He's a great defensive player. Now, yeah, he's a bitch right now when he has open looks, but he also can't shoot. I don't disagree that there's something broken, but if I don't believe it all is mental. I think the bigger problem is the fact that he can't shoot. I think in today's NBA, if you can't shoot, like, you can have one guy on the floor who can't shoot, and he can't be your best player. I really don't think he can be your second best player. Maybe he can be your third. Maybe. To be honest, I don't love him being your primary ball handler either. So
wait, hold on. Let's do this, right? So let's say Cade Cunningham's the pick, right? So now you got Killian Hayes, you got Cade Cunningham. That's basically your point. You bring in Ben Simmons. Where is he slotted? Are you going to run 3-point guards?
He's your 5.
He's your 5?
He's 5.
Okay, this is interesting.
I mean, that's just. But here's the thing. Offensively, he has to be a 5. He doesn't necessarily have to be your 5 defensively, but whoever you're playing at the 4 has to be playing on the perimeter. Ben Simmons needs to be the guy inside. And he's not a true 5. Like, the Pistons don't have it all figured out if they end up with Ben Simmons. But offensively in the half court, the only role I can give him is the paint. And I can only have one guy there.
I kind of like him as your 5, actually. Like, I haven't thought about it. I haven't thought about it like that.
The problem is defensively, that's not going to work. You need somebody who can body a center. But it's funny. Because him and Embiid don't work together, but at the same time, like, I kind of want a big guy who spends time out on the perimeter.
So that's kind of the reason why I like him as your 5, because he's a guy who can get away from the basket and shoot. He could be a stretch 5, and I kind of like that.
Who the fuck are you talking about? Ben Simmons?
Yeah,
a guy who can get away from the basket and shoot.
Like 12 feet. He should have.
That's not away from the basket.
I'm not talking about like stretching the floor. I'm not talking about shooting threes.
How deep is the paint? What 12? Dude, that's not like no. Even 12 feet's a tough.
What I'm saying is he doesn't have to play with his back to the basket. Is what I'm saying.
If he can't touch the paint with his fingertips, he's useless. If he's farther than his arm length from the paint, he's a piece of shit. He's useless. But anyways, like, I'm not worried about the head case part of it. I just think most guys solve that. Like, seriously, maybe I'm missing it here.
Here's the 5 guys. He had a dunk, and he passed up on a dunk during the playoffs.
Okay, but no, seriously, name me 5 guys who like were head cases, great players who just like didn't have confidence, who were afraid to shoot the ball, name me 5 guys like that who just never figured that out. I remember being told Andre Drummond would never learn to shoot free throws. He did. Like, every single player ever. Honestly, is there a guy who went through a long NBA career and never figured out how to shoot free throws? Like, the basic confidence stuff, guys figure it out. Maybe it takes longer than it should. I'm not worried about that. I am worried about the fact that, like, if you're building with Ben Simmons, you have to build the entire team. Like, you can't have anybody who doesn't fit him. All 4 guys need to be good shooters. Like, honestly, even though I don't want to trade Killian Hayes for Ben Simmons, I don't know that I want Ben Simmons, Killian Hayes, and Cade Cunningham. Because, like, Killian Hayes needs the ball in his hands to be the best player he can be. I think Cade Cunningham kind of does too. And so you just create this weird situation where you have too many guys who need the ball, but none of them who are good enough to demand the ball. I'm only doing it if it's free because, like, in the world where he ever develops a high-end shot, like, if he can give me 30% from the 3-point line, Ben Simmons is a world of difference. I still don't like paying him $40 million, but in the current situation, the Pistons cap situation is, like, incredible. I mean, they're not paying anybody who's going to be here long term. Like, Jeremy Grant's paid, but, like, you could dump him in a minute. Somebody wants him.
Yeah, everybody wants him. At least it feels like it.
So, like, my answer is no, but I do think it's intriguing just in the fact that I think he's enough to like, you're not going to lose to bad teams with Ben Simmons as your best player.
I agree with that, but I just don't know if you're the Pistons, right? And this is the perspective we're doing this from. Should the Pistons trade for Ben Simmons? If you're the Pistons, do you take this on? Like you said, the contract's roughly $40 million. He kind of needs the ball in his hand because he's his best player when he has the ball in his hand, but he can't shoot for shit. A little bit of a head case right now. And do I think a change of scenery might do him some good? Yeah, I think a change of scenery probably would do him some good. I think there probably is a ton of pressure on him. Do I think he needs to see somebody to kind of talk about it to get his head right? Yeah, probably does. I don't know if I'm the Pistons if I make that move, especially with where I'm at with this draft, with what I've already got established. Because I don't know if I have enough guys who are lights out shooters to be able to pick up his slack if he's never going to get it together. And like you said, maybe he does get it together, maybe he doesn't. I don't really know what his mental makeup is. I've not spent enough time with Ben Simmons or watched enough of his games to really know. But what I do know is what I've seen in the playoffs is a guy who has something going on. He's a little bit broken when it comes to a shot. We've already he came into the league, he didn't have a very good shot, and it's not gotten much better. And when you're passing up dunks in a playoff game where you need to win, there's something really like the confidence is just it's absolute zero right there.
You put me on an NBA team and let me play 35 minutes for just one game.
Yes.
I would shoot more threes than Ben Simmons has in his career. I'm not saying I'd make any of them. I'm not even saying any of them would make it to the rim. But that man has only shot 34 three-pointers. You're going to give me 35 minutes in an NBA game and you don't think I'm going to shoot 35 three-pointers? Man, I thought it was a little lower when I started that. But I'll definitely beat his career high, 12. I'll shoot 12 three-pointers in a one NBA game.
You could do that.
I do think it's appealing trading him for Ben Simmons from one angle that nobody is addressing at all. Look at what Oklahoma City has done. It's Reclamation Project City, where they bring on a guy who needs a little rehab, right? Like Chris Paul was viewed as an untradeable contract to an extent. Then all of a sudden they traded him for picks. I don't know that Paul George was viewed quite the same way, but Paul George came on and he left. And I just wonder, Ben Simmons has 4 years on his deal. Is there a world where you bring on Ben Simmons, you eat 2 years of the deal, and you can flip him for more than you got for him? That's why I don't want to. That's why I don't want to give anything meaningful, because I don't want to give a Sadiq Bey in a first and go, man, for this to work out, you got to get more than that in return. But if they're desperate just to dump him on anybody, and you can take him on, there's no reason you can't eat the contract for a couple of years. There's no reason you can't. So if you could take him on, eat the contract for a couple of years, make it a little bit easier to trade him, and someone goes, hey, it's only a 2-year deal, we're willing to take the chance for a guy who has superstar potential, that's an interesting angle to me.
What if it was to be so? What if you were to trade? I don't think this would happen, but it has more to do with Jeremy Grant's contract, because I think he only has 1 year left. But what if the 76ers were like, give us Jeremy Grant and a second?
He has two, but I could be wrong. Yeah, I'm here for Jeremy Grant in a second. I wouldn't even hesitate.
Yeah, I think, and like you said, it would be one of those things where I think you would have to have a plan with him. I don't think you can just grab him, add him to this roster, and then expect him to be here for the long haul. Just because, depending on what you do with that first-round draft pick, I think you got too many ball handlers that need the ball, and I don't know if he's good enough to be on this team.
I mean, my goal would be Reclamation Project, and it doesn't mean it can't change. It doesn't mean it can't go a different way. But my goal is to bring Ben Simmons in, show you what he's capable of being for 2 years. And now I have a guy whose contract isn't, 4 years is a major commitment. 2 years is not nearly as tough. And I think in 2 years, if you can make him look better than he did in this playoff series, because let's be clear here, his value dropped significantly in the last 2 weeks.
Yes.
He was worth James Harden, according to the Houston Rockets, 6 months ago. Mm-hmm. Can you turn Ben Simmons into the value of James Harden 6 months later? Not 6 months, 2 years later.
2 years later. I mean, if you could, possible. That's great. Yeah, if you could, that's great. But you're going to have to work some wizardry, I think. Like I said, it just, I don't know, man.
The thing is, though, at 24, I keep saying this, but at 24 years old with 4 years on the contract, it's not wizardry. Every year that comes off the contract, he immediately becomes more appealing because teams always want to take it. Like, superstars don't become available often. So if you have a piece who has a chance to be a superstar, teams are going to be interested. The reason there's less interest in Ben Simmons is because you are committing 4 years to him. If you're a team who's trying to win now and you trade for Ben Simmons and he's not good enough, it ruins literally everything. Mm-hmm. If you're a team who says, hey, we're not there yet, and you're wrong, it doesn't ruin everything because you're already not there yet.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I'm still not investing in him. And for me, this goes back to kind of what we were talking about earlier. I'm just going to stick with the plan that I have. And I'm not bringing him in. Look, you got Killian Hayes, who I think could be a pretty good player. If you get Cade Cunningham, we've already talked about what he could possibly be. You've got other pieces that surround those guys, right? Sadiq Bey is a pretty good player. I like what I have as far as nucleus. I don't need to bring in a guy like Ben Simmons. and I don't need to maybe disrupt what I have for a blueprint. I understand what you're saying. And if you are able, again, if you are able to flip him 2 years later and you can get more than what you've invested in him, then I think it's a fantastic deal. And I think it makes all the sense in the world. I'm just not willing to risk that.
I just don't think it's really that much of a risk if you're doing it for chump change. That's why I'm not trading anything, that nucleus you don't want to move on from. Yes. I don't want to either. I don't want Ben Simmons if you're trading the nucleus. Mm-hmm. But if you're getting him for chump change, what's the risk? 2 years of a bad contract? Because the next 2 years don't matter. Literally what he makes the next 2 years are absolutely meaningless. There is no world where in the next 2 years the Pistons are worried about where to find the money to make something happen. Mm-hmm. The 2 years after that, okay, you got to start paying some of these guys who are currently on rookie deals. But if you're eating 1 or 2 years of a bad contract, honestly, I think it's no risk if you're trading chump change. Taking him on is no risk. Giving up pieces is risk. That's where I'm at. I think I think we kind of circled around a little bit here. I don't know that we need to get into it a whole lot more. I'll put it this way. I don't think it's going to happen. I think that somebody is going to be willing to give up more because I know that he is really taking a hit this playoffs. But the view on Ben Simmons up until the last 2 weeks was that he's a franchise player. Yep. I don't think 2 weeks are going to completely undo that. He won't get what he would have gotten last year, but somebody's going to want to take a chance on him to be their guy.
I agree with you. I think somebody will pay whatever they're asking for. And I don't really know what that demand would be. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see if the 76ers do move on from him and what they get in return.
CJ McCollum is something I've heard recently that could plausibly make sense on both sides. The Blazers are obviously getting kind of old. Let them get younger. And on the flip side, CJ McCollum, the exact opposite, starting to get up there a little bit in age, putting him on a team who's contending. Like CJ McCollum can be a nice piece on a contending team. His ceiling at this point in his career is not what Ben Simmons is, but it's an interesting thought. It's not James Harden. It's definitely
not James Harden. I think that would be interesting.
It's more than
I think that'd be an interesting trade. See, I think that'd be a good trade for both teams too. I like that trade. Like, I think instantly makes the 76ers more of a real threat to win a championship. And I think for the Blazers, it helps you kind of kickstart. If you're going to do a rebuild, if you're going to do a retool,
you're moving
it
on
helps
from
you
Damian
kickstart
Lillard
that.
if you make that trade.
Yeah.
You move him next.
Yep.
Assuming it wants to be. We don't really know. And we'll wrap it there. I think it's been a good discussion. Pistons all show. I don't know 72 episodes in if we've ever done that before.
I don't think so.
Maybe around a draft, but man, it's been a minute.